God commanded us not to eat from a living animal? Where? Why is this prohibition even important? In this video, we go over the Noahide prohibition of eating the limb from a living animal, one of the 7 laws incumbent on all mankind. God granted Adam, the first man, dominion over all living creatures. But this dominion is only limited to using the animals to perform useful tasks. They were not given permission to eat the animals for food. Right? We see in Genesis 2 verse 16 that God gives Adam and Eve permission to eat from all the trees of the garden except for one. He does not give them permission to eat any of the animals in the garden. So it isn't until after the flood that God gives mankind permission to eat animals for food. But there's one exception to this permission. Genesis 9 verse 4 states, "But flesh with its soul, its blood, you shall not eat." Now Torah thought has it that the soul leaves the blood when the creature dies. So this prohibition is essentially saying that we cannot eat flesh from a living animal while it's still alive, while its soul is within its blood. Even though the verse uses the word flesh, Jewish tradition holds that it really refers to any part of the animal, whether that's a whole limb or just a small piece of meat. The reason the law is often called eating the limb from a living animal is because cutting off a limb from an animal is a more extreme and obvious act of cruelty. But the rule actually just applies to any meat taken from a living animal. Because the key idea behind the law is preventing unnecessary suffering from living creatures. So after Noah left the ark, God granted Noah permission to kill any animal for food or for any beneficial use of their body parts. Conversely, God did not grant Adam or Noah and his descendants permission to kill, injure, or cause suffering to an animal for no beneficial purpose. So for example, it's forbidden to skin an animal while it's still alive, or cut out one of its organs while it's still alive. If you require any provision from an animal, you should kill it first, and in a way that causes the least amount of suffering. I know there are some slaughterhouses that don't comply with these rules, and really we should not eat that meat, because if it's cut from a living animal, even if the animal dies, it was still cut from a living animal, and thus it is prohibited for us to eat. Now if you recall, the aid that we use to remember all of the Noahide laws is Genesis 2 verse 16, "And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat." This last part, "you may freely eat," is permission for Adam to eat from all of the trees, but it does not give Adam permission to eat from a living animal. Remember, none of this creation is inherently ours. Everything technically belongs to God, so if God doesn't give you permission to do something, probably shouldn't do it. So interestingly enough, we find that all 7 laws were technically given to Adam. It was first thought that only 6 laws were given to Adam and then the 7th to Noah after the ark. But technically, since God only gave Adam permission to eat from the trees, technically eating the limb from a living animal is prohibited. So we can say that all 7 of these laws have been around since the first human. Now again, we don't follow them because Adam or Noah followed them. We only follow the laws because they were repeated at Mount Sinai in front of the entire Jewish nation, the highest degree of divine revelation. And so this prohibition is repeated in Deuteronomy 12 verse 23. So this Noahide law is actually pretty far reaching. In this commandment is an underlying respect for all of creation. Thus you will see that this law extends beyond animals. Here are the basics. If meat was severed from a living land animal or bird, one may not eat from that meat. Included in this is not to inflict any cruelty or unnecessary pain to any living creature, not to cause the mating together of 2 different species of animals, not to graft together 2 different species of fruit trees, not to unnecessarily castrate or neuter an animal, and then we also have an obligation to be guardians over nature and the life of all creatures, so that they will not be destroyed unnecessarily. Again, we will go over all of these, the technicalities, where they're derived, everything. So subscribe to stay tuned. I hope you guys learned something. Thank you for watching.